This is it, the final chapter in the story of Skywalker. Does it deliver? This is my review. Blocked content.
Hello, this video is for good boys and girls.
What's happening, my block buddies, and welcome to a very special episode, a review of Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. I know we usually don't do stuff like this, but this felt like very appropriate. Today, we're actually going to be reviewing the movie. I just saw it. I'm super fresh out of the cinema. It was quite something, right? So this will be a little bit of a mix between a spoiler review and a non-spoiler review. So I'll give you guys my quick thoughts about the film in a non-spoiler fashion, and then I'll go through the entire film and talk about all the things that worked for me, that didn't work for me, all the things thematically that kind of tie everything together, the things that didn't do that all that well. So I think that, yeah, if you've seen the film already, this is going to be a really great review to dive into it. But if you're new to it and you haven't seen it yet and you kind of want just general thoughts on it before you're seeing it, you can watch the first part and I'll give you guys a little second right after the non-spoiler thing to click away. So I hope you guys are settled in. I hope you guys are excited, because usually we do a lot of gaming content on here, Nintendo, Super Smash Brothers, but Star Wars is a big love of mine, and I've actually done content of this like in the past, in the very, very early days of the channel, so I'm really excited to do it again, and to kind of talk about the rise of Skywalker. Now, here are my brief, non-spoiler thoughts, right? The tone of this thing, I really feel like this is an action movie, like an Indiana Jones kind of thing, so it really doesn't feel like a Star Wars film per se, in terms like, oh yeah, you have the really big lightsaber battle in the middle, and you have the little adventure piece. Well, it doesn't really play out all too much like that. It really feels more like an Indiana Jones kind of story, which I really think works for the film, especially seeing the characters are super great together. The new ones are really cool. I think they're a little bit rushed in the story, especially not being part of the main gang. They all have their own little scenes where they, you know, find the thing or talk about where to find the thing, right? The big MacGuffin. But I really wish that they join like the main crew of the story. So yeah, that to me was a little bit of a letdown, but I think Lando is absolutely perfectly used in this film. Dee Williams is amazing on screen and definitely feels like he was all the time was in this universe doing stuff, and I would just catch up with him a little bit later. The new characters that were in promos, stuff like Claude, the alien, yeah, they're in the movie for literally like one line, so most of the new characters that we're looking forward to, yeah, don't get too attached to them because they won't be around for a very long time. Like, they have very, very small parts, but all the main characters are together with amazing chemistry. I really didn't expect to see Finn, Poe, and Rey all together, you know, having banter, and it actually working, like C-3PO together with them, Chewie, and it just really works, and I was really astounded by these three actors that were never really on screen together, having such great chemistry, and also, it's the last movie in these three, and yeah, having them together now feels just right. The action, overall, the action is solid. Space combat is nothing new. They do some light skipping stuff, that's great, but they should have gone to crazier locations with that and do some weirder things. But yeah, it's very well made. I like the space combat a lot. As far as the, you know, down on the ground, the lightsaber fights, they feel very real. They pack a punch, kind of like in Star Wars The Force Awakens, the duel between Rey and Kylo at the end there. They pack a punch, but there are far too few. You know, there's like one big lightsaber fight, that's it, for like a 9-chapter saga ender, right? So I really feel like they're not nearly as flashy as they could be with maybe better choreographers. I mean, in the past decade, we've gotten so many great action movies that, you know, basically have stunt people doing the directing for these great action scenes, and that works so well. And I just hope that these new Star Wars movies would do something like that, because it just feels like Rey's fighting with a bat instead of a sword, something like that. Even the hits per second are probably even less than Return of the Jedi, and that kind of matters, you know, that kind of, you know, ups the feel of these magical, crazy Jedi and Sith fighters that are really good at this thing, but now it kind of feels like people, you know, like little kids in a playground. So to me, that was a little bit of a letdown too. The good of this thing, you know, it feels like a great conclusion to this, you know, this trilogy, not the entire saga, but this trilogy. It's shot amazingly well, great cinematography, especially, seeing The Last Jedi. That was a little bit different in tone, very like Rian Johnson-y in terms of color grading and everything, but this goes back to that Force Awakens, that really Star Wars-y feel with a big depth of field and everything. Great sound design, even though my theater wasn't all that great. The music is perfect. There was literally no prequel music in there to speak of, which really disappointed me because that was even in the trailers. They hinted like, oh yeah, there will be Duel of Fates, stuff like that. Nothing like that was in there. Williams, although did really outdo himself, I really feel like there were moments that gave me chills that I really didn't expect to be hit with those old classic themes and still feel that rush. So that was really great. A great one to go out on for Williams. And the bad of this movie, well, most of this will go into the spoiler review, but the bad is that this movie won't win over the actual hardcore fans. I could disconnect myself from this a little bit. I mean, I'm in the middle of a bit of a hardcore fan and a casual Star Wars fan. I know a lot about the extended stuff. I know a lot about, comics and TV shows about Star Wars, but not literally everything. But I talked to some fans before I went into the film, and I knew that these people were like religious Star Wars fans that knew everything about it, and they talked to me about their expectations for the film and things that they would like to see, and literally nothing that they wanted ended up in the film, and they were like the big Star Wars fans that had these like crazy outlandish wishes, but also some things like thematically that not at all ended up in the film. So I'm really curious like to hear their review because of course they do one themselves too, so I'll keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that really made me guess like, oh wow, is the mainline like Star Wars fandom really not gonna like this film? Because these guys just named like 7 things, like none of the 7 things happened in the film. It went a completely different direction than like even thematically the stuff that they wanted, right? So yeah, that made me a little bit curious, right? Well, so what's also bad about this thing is there's way too much MacGuffin search and stuff. So like we gotta find the thing, and then next we gotta find the second thing and the third thing, and they're not really all that connected towards each other. So I really feel like in terms of like script tightening, it could have been a little bit more character focused and not necessarily how do we get characters from this planet to that planet. You could have really tied that in with any other, plot device than the MacGuffin thing, right? Also, the main antagonist doesn't feel at all fleshed out, even though it'd be really easy to do so because there's more than enough material in, canon and also in Legends to kind of make this character bigger than it was supposed to be in this film. Because, yeah, I really didn't feel like there were too many reasons for things to happen other than remember that this guy did this thing. So, well, let me explain everything while just running through the film, but I just want to give a brief recap about what I thought about the Star Wars saga as of yet, so you kind of know where I'm coming from, the things that I like, so you guys can kind of feel, oh yeah, that's that particular thing that you like or grew up with. So this is still non-spoiler territory, right? So I love the original trilogy. A New Hope is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it kind of perfected the hero's journey storytelling, right? I think it's the best Star Wars film because of its pacing, the introduction to the entire Star Wars world, and that shot of Luke with the binary suns. I think Empire is a masterpiece and elevated the saga so much. Return of the Jedi is one of my least favorite Star Wars films, like out of all of them, which is crazy, right? It's a lot of people's favorite film, except all of the Vader and Emperor and Luke stuff. Weirdly paced, I think. It's clunky dialogue. A lot of things are just strange in that film, and it really feels like Harrison Ford doesn't want to be there. So yeah, I don't really enjoy rewatching that thing. I actually am of the generation that grew up watching the prequels in cinemas. I actually don't hate The Phantom Menace. I think it is a masterclass in world building with its planets, rules, visuals, ships, and has the best lightsaber fight in any of the films, the one with Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Darth Maul. I think Attack of the Clones is my least favorite Star Wars movie of them all, of the entire Skywalker saga. The acting is even more wooden than the stuff in Phantom Menace, and the obvious green screen stuff is even more apparent in this one. I think Hayden has no chemistry with Natalie Portman, so the main emotional through line of the film kind of falls flat, which is crazy, but I do love the Jango Fett subplot and some of the Dooku stuff. Some of the Clone War shots are actually really good to this day, very impressive. So Revenge of the Sith is one of my favorite Star Wars films. It has incredible action from the very first big shot, that you had one-taker shots throughout space, and some of the best lightsaber fights. I mean, the Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Dooku fight at the beginning beginning, the huge Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight at the end, man, that's just incredible. And you could say it's over choreographed dance sequences, but man, those are 10 million times better than anything that we've gotten since, right? And in terms of pacing and changes of scenery, it does a great job showing so much of the galaxy. It actually works super well as a bridge between the prequels and the original, even though, yeah, some of it might feel too contrived. I love Star Wars like that. As for the in-between films and the other content, Rogue One, I think was pretty great. Excellent set design, very, very lived in, and a missed opportunity to have Darth Vader like land on the beach of Scarif and slaughter every single main character with force powers in his saber. But the film still is super great, especially like Mads Mikkelsen and Ben Mendelsohn. They give superb performances. Solo, I actually didn't care for at all. It's actually my least favorite Star Wars movie out of all of them, even less than like Attack of the Clones. I was really surprised that I saw a Star Wars film in theaters that literally felt and played out like filler. The acting performances are all good, but the color grading is super drab. The big set pieces didn't really work for me, like a train in space, and the cringeworthy Darth Maul tie-in at the end left me almost like embarrassed and insulted as a Star Wars fan. He turned his like double-bladed lightsaber on in a hologram. That's Darth Maul, you get it? As far as other material goes, Battlefront is okay, but the amazing graphics, Clone Wars TV show had some standout moments. I love the characterization of the clones, the evolution of Ahsoka, and fleshing out of Anakin's like slow, darker side tendencies. And Rebels was just okay, with some great moments near the end with Vader and stuff like that with Ahsoka. And other stuff, yeah, books and stuff, I think I didn't watch all that much. As for the sequel trilogy, I loved The Force Awakens initially, and it still holds up as a very good J.J. Abrams action movie with okay humor, some simple original trilogy tropes. It had great cinematography and worked really well as a reintroduction. I think The Last Jedi was super divisive, but initially I actually loved the film and all the weird chances that it took. It's shot like any Rian Johnson film. It feels super out of place in Star Wars, and that's what I liked about it initially. I was on board for the old Hermit Luke stuff. That was great acting too, and I actually enjoyed the Kylo and Rey Force Bond stuff. On rewatch though, I actually really disliked the movie and thought that it had terrible pacing and some story decisions that made no sense to me, but in theaters I actually loved the movie, which is kind of weird. Okay, so now we've come to this moment where I actually talk about the entire film, The Rise of Skywalker. So now you know the kind of stuff that I love, the kind of stuff that didn't really work for me, so hopefully that gives some context to what I'm about to discuss with you guys. So let me explain everything while running through the film Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Again, right now there are spoilers. If you haven't seen the film, click it off right now and maybe save it for a little bit later when you have seen it. From this point on, there will be spoilers for The Rise of Skywalker. All right? Yeah, like we're going in deep. Here we go. The opening crawl, right? One of my favorites of all time, actually. It's really great, it's serviceable, and it has a great opening stinger. Like the first line is something like, "The dead speak," which is really great and really Star Wars-y. My showing in my theater, the projection actually malfunctioned, and we got a huge green screen, which was super strange. They had to like reboot the entire movie from like even changing the scope of the image, making it a little bit bigger. It was super strange. We got green screen. There was a guy in the back that yelled like, "Yeah, I knew they used green screen in Star Wars, but this is like super crazy." So everyone got a good laugh out of that. The crawl actually mentioned that there was this super important Palpatine call or thing that was heard throughout the galaxy that we should have seen. It felt really out of place that we didn't hear or see that at all in the scene. Would have totally loved it because that's what the whole film was built on, and it's just like in the opening crawl and we don't see it or hear it ever. So Kylo Ren goes berserk on people in slow motion, gave me huge Last Jedi vibes. I thought that sequence was really great, and Kylo now goes to Sidious, and this thing, almost exactly like in the little trailer that they released. Shots were a little bit longer, but I wish there were more like dark side voices. It just has this thing where like Palpatine goes, "I've been every voice," and then Snow goes, "You have ever heard," and then Darth Vader goes something like, "Inside your head." I can't do all the voices, but I really thought that they would bring in more bad guys, more Sith, more stuff, even more of those same characters, because he could have really played with Kylo's head. They didn't do that. I really wish that they would have. So Palpatine reveal, right? So the camera pans, he does the old line, the dark side is a pathway to many abilities. So I really didn't like them bringing that back because of course that's his most famous line. Why do you repeat that verbatim? I really didn't think that was a good idea. He has white eyes, he's decrepit, but not nearly as much as in Revenge of the Sith or Return of the Jedi, which was weird. It felt like there were no prosthetic makeup on Ian McDiarmid, which made him look younger than he ever was. He had some black makeup around his mouth and stuff like that. It didn't really work for me, which is weird. This is the big reveal, and it really didn't feel like the character that we knew. There were some really weird changes. It was in Last Jedi when we saw the Yoda puppet, but it was the weird wrong choice of green and everything. Stuff like that. Just it makes no sense to me. Get the original prosthetic makeup and just put that on him or remake that. So Palpatine worked for me though, the voice and everything, in a scary antagonistic sense, not story-wise. Snoke was in tubes everywhere, and I thought, the idea of I am Snoke, and I've died before, really no explanation, just J.J. Abrams dialogue, just simply glazing over things and not really explaining it. And, there's a lot of exposition in this movie, but that was definitely a point where I really wanted to know, how do you mean I am Snoke? Was your Sith force inside of that character, or is it some other deal? Talk about this. And just the idea of I've died before and I'm here now, that really felt when Maz Kanata in The Force Awakens said, that's another story for another time. No, it's a story for now time. It's a story for right now. So that was weird. So we cut to Rey training. She has some dialogue with Leia, which I think was really well implemented, the Leia stuff. Of course, Carrie Fisher passed away, and they used footage from Force Awakens. They did the best that they could. Sometimes you could really feel the script was working towards a line that they already recorded, which sometimes felt a little bit off. It really felt like you were watching people kind of struggle around getting to react to a line that had no real bearing on that situation. You felt that, but I probably only felt it because I exactly knew about the situation, right? Maybe if someone just goes in fresh, they wouldn't feel it, but it could only have felt a little bit weird. So I was happy with it just being a little weird and not super weird. So the mission with the main characters was great. Loved that. Good chemistry. Jokes landed okay-ish. I think that, the J.J. Abrams kind of humor, it works for the most part. The kind of they fly now. Yeah, they fly now. That stuff, sometimes it works really well. There's some C-3PO stuff in here that really works well. So the foreshadowing of Rey Skywalker was heavy in the film. Not too good. When they land on Basana, there is this girl that basically says, who are you and what's your family name? And all of that felt, oh, they're gonna pay that off later. That really felt even for a kid's movie, it felt really too much on the nose. Well, going back to C-3PO, in the first half of this entire film, he's the funniest that he's ever been, C-3PO. I think I was the only one that laughed out loud because it was a press screening, but I just couldn't help myself. It was just really funny. C-3PO was great. The funniest he's ever been. During the middle of the movie, he changes, and when he changes, this was something that Anthony Daniels talked about, and being super happy with something new for C-3PO, and he totally loved what JJ was doing. Throughout that part where he changes, I didn't find him funny anymore, but we'll talk about that later. There's this part where Rey now actually has healing powers. She heals this sandworm that's actually hurt. So instead of they're attacking that little thing, she's actually healing this thing, and that's where we learn of a new force power. There's also the Knights of Ren in that planet. Sadly, they really have nothing to do in this movie. Just stand there menacingly and escorting Chewie out of there. They have no characterization between all of them, so they are just stormtroopers basically. No voices, no really unique display of power, no splitting up to take care of different characters. I really thought they would do at least one of those things, but none of them. There was just no time. There was even no Phasma in this movie, and still they didn't really find time for this. Crazy. Then there's Rey versus Kylo Ambasada, which is great. She jumps over the TIE fighter, she slashes off the wing, which looks awesome. I think the fight is really cool. It ends in some sort of force pull of a big ship, and that's super cool. Chewie's death by force lightning, she just shoots out force lightning because she's just angry with Kylo still pulling at the ship. I liked that part. I do think it's really cool. I think the movie could have focused a little bit more on like Rey's dark side is coming out and she really can't control it. That was really the only big moment where that happened. There's one moment a little bit later, but that didn't really feel like it was a dark side thing. It was just like the light side wins. But then, you know, they reveal that Chewie isn't dead in that transport, that it was actually the wrong transport, and that kind of feels like a cop-out. They could have, you know, thought of something a little bit different. You know, maybe Chewie was hurt and still in there. So I definitely think the emotional, quiet scenes work the best between Rey and Finn. I really love that. Rey actually gets like this weird mixed signal from Finn where he's like confessing his love like twice. It's never explored fully in the film, but it's brought up twice. So that's super strange. They never pay that off, but it's like super hinted at that Finn is like, oh yeah, I need to tell you something. What were you going to tell me? No, I'll save it for later. So what is that thing, right? Is that like a confession? I would have loved to see something like that, but they never bring it up again. So Kerry Russell's Zori Bliss, I thought, of course they go to that snowy planet and they get her help. They really needed to like decode the Sith thing. It's great. I like her character. I like her suit. I like her voice. I like seeing her eyes as well, especially her scene with Poe, like one-on-one. That was really great. Not nearly enough of that, but I really felt like that hit an emotional beat for me that I was looking for with this film, and I could have used more of that. And then, of course, Poe says, come with us. I was like, yes, do that. Like, team up. You guys need, like, this really cool Guardians of the Galaxy, like, you know, hero group instead of splitting up. I was like, yes, but then they don't do it, and they like kind of pay it off later, but not nearly in the way that it could have, right? C-3PO then, of course, needs to read that Sith language from that little dagger thing. The memory wipe starts, which I think is the weakest part of the movie, like the moment where C-3PO is like, taking one last look, sir, at my friends. I thought that it was going to be, we're going to at least see some flashbacks to his whole memory. So a little bit of Luke, a little bit of the prequel stuff, but nothing like that. Like, he was literally talking about people that he's been friends with for 2 years, which is a really weird decision to me. Everyone was like hoping, oh, he's going into his memory. In some ways, he totally was. But the weakest part of the movie was that his memory wipe changed C-3PO a bit. Like, another different way that they could have changed it too was that it would have been an aggressive, like, battle combat ready C-3PO with red eyes. But the red eyes are only there for 2 seconds, and a low voice is there, and then it's gone. There are forced, like, this is my first this, and now this is my first that, because he's completely rebooted and doesn't really know these characters, which I don't think is a very funny thing. Like, he kept saying, this is my first laser battle, and this is my first this, and that was the entire joke, and it didn't work. This is really what Anthony Daniels meant when he said, like, JJ has gotten this crazy idea for me, that everything worked better for C-3PO in the first half. He was super funny, and him tagging along, and Poe really not liking him, but yeah, him like reinforcing, oh guys, I'm okay too, if you guys were wondering. I love that part. So really could have used more C-3PO in the classic sense. Now, Babu Frick is great. He, of course, changed C-3PO, little monkey, little guy, but he's no Baby Yoda. He was cute, and there were definitely some great lines, but yeah, they struck gold with Baby Yoda. They will never redo that with a character like this. So I think that JJ was like, oh no, I totally wanted to do the cute thing, and now I can't anymore. So the Death Star wreckage, right? They arrive there. Janna, a cool new character with a bow and arrow and these cool Orbak, the cool horses. They look great. Sadly, the character is a little bit underwritten. She's a stormtrooper, like an ex-stormtrooper, like a lot of people, but we don't really get to know them. We only get to know her, and just a little bit, and it felt like the story was building up to like a stormtrooper revolt, where all the stormtroopers would kind of agree with each other, you know, and maybe even Finn leading that charge, you know, completing his character arc, and not only becoming a resistance hero, but also saving others like him. That would have felt like a really satisfying change, and, you know, an end to his arc. And that the stormtroopers would actually be revolting, you know, because we are getting, like, the First Order will change into the Final Order, because, yeah, I know, the Final Order, right? Order 66, because of Palpatine's orders, and I think that it would have been a really cool thing if, everyone worked together, and even the original stormtroopers would kind of change their mind and work together, because this Final Order thing is just crazy and doing things that they don't want to do at all. The reason why Finn changed, the reason why Janna changed, is seeing all this, and I think that they could have done a really great storyline where, it's all those white stormtroopers against the new Sith troopers. I mean, I thought that that's why they introduced them, because they were going to even fight everybody. Well, that turned out not to be the case. It would have been marvelous, though, and the Sith Trooper stuff now, to me, makes no sense. So Rey climbs the Death Star, the wreckage right there on one of the Endor moons, which I thought was actually great. One of my favorite parts, where Rey, goes to the wreckage and climbs it and finds all this stuff. There's this Dark Rey moment, which it almost played exactly like in the trailer. Even the cut was exactly like in the trailer. Totally crazy. Didn't think that would be pretty much all they showed. There was this tiny fight, they clashed lightsabers 3 times or something like that, and that was it. I really wanted more time with that, or at least something with a little bit more substance. I really wanted to know what this scene meant to Rey, and it's over so quickly because Kylo's just there. So then Rey versus Kylo starts, which is a visually beautiful fight, but one of the biggest missed opportunities in the film to give us a prequel quality lightsaber fight. This is the only one really in the film, and the choreography, for me, it didn't work. I was really hoping to enjoy it, and I was sitting there waiting for it to pick up the pace. I love all this stuff with, now they're doing big jumps over big waves. Okay, now it's going to start. Now it's going to be on the level of an Anakin versus Obi-Wan. But it cuts to close-ups way too often. It doesn't let the fight play out at all. It's slow. Rey still uses her sword like a bat, which doesn't work at all in these lightsaber fights. She doesn't parry well. She doesn't really use any techniques or stances. And I'm not a sword fighter at all, but I know when stuff doesn't feel right, because I've watched a lot of sword fights in movies and in, of course, these battle choreography behind the scenes videos. Now, then Kylo tells Rey she is a Palpatine. He knows everything. A granddaughter of Palpatine, right? So, of the Emperor. The emotion in their fight was great. That's a thing that I think misses in even the original trilogy. Well, to some moments, right? But especially in the prequels, emotion kind of misses there, where you can clearly see one character is winning and one is getting, beat up. Rey got beaten in this fight at a moment, but then can actually kill Kylo Ren, slices him through the stomach, because Princess Leia actually uses a Force bond to communicate and then dies in the process, uses her last bit of Force power to kind of distract Kylo Ren, talk to him. Clear that there was no real arc that they could have shot for Leia to die, and her visual look is younger than in The Last Jedi in this movie, which is strange. In The Last Jedi, Leia has a gray hair color, and now it's back to brown, and her face looks, noticeably younger than in The Last Jedi, which to me is strange. And I was really hoping maybe in The Last Jedi there's some footage that they could have used. Probably there's a lot of Leia stuff in there, but them choosing this, they actually did the best they could. I think that there's some stand-in stuff with another actress. I do think that they used some CG, even though they said they didn't, for very clear shots where Leia is laying down or walking away, and you can still see her face. That's probably CG'd. So there's probably a little bit of that, but they handled it with the most respect they could. That was really great. But then, as Kylo, of course, dies, Rey then heals him. Her moment, I wanted to take your hand, but I wanted to take Ben's hand. That was the best line in the movie for me, and that kind of transitions into something crazy. Rey actually leaves in the TIE fighter, and she goes away. She's basically completely done with all of this, and it leaves Kylo Ren there, and he actually has a scene where he sees a memory of Han Solo. Yes, Harrison Ford in the Flash. There was this one guy in the back of the theater, and he was going, "What the?" Really loud, and it was a press screening, so everyone was super professional, but everyone laughed because we were all feeling the same thing. It's no Force ghost, but he's there. This is kind of weird. It's new stuff with Harrison Ford. I wish it was written a bit differently. But I think the idea here was that it was a memory and he wished that he would do something different, but maybe there was a way to do this differently. And maybe, they could have even transitioned to that old location in Starkiller Base and kind of, do it that way so it would really be a memory and not just, this is sort of like a Force Ghost thing, but not a Force Ghost thing. I think Harrison looked the part still, very much so, and he was acting beautifully. But I think Adam Driver, that was crazy, man. He is, especially for the new characters, he is leagues beyond anyone in this film in terms of acting like bravado quality. Then he throws his lightsaber away, finally, right? And he says, "Dad," and Han Solo just goes, "I know," which is good. I like that part. Someone yelled it out. It was super funny. We were really caught off guard. It was weird. There was a little bit of silence there, but it worked. So, yes, Rey at this point has used Force lightning. She's killed Kylo, basically, seen her dark side self. She knows she's a Palpatine, so everything's looking dire and drab. So, she basically retreats to Octo, the Ireland planet, as I like to call it. Leia's funeral is a little bit in there, which was actually touching. Chewie breaking down at hearing she died was one of the best parts in the film. Like, low-key, that was one of the best moments. I think it's great that they played it in just a wide shot and didn't, go into, get more mileage out of it. It was really well played. I love that Jonas actually got to play a huge emotional beat there. He did amazingly. So Rey destroys her ship, the TIE fighter, even throws like some more, debris in there to make the fire bigger. She's like, "I'm totally done with this. I'm going Luke Skywalker on this thing," right? She throws her lightsaber away just like Luke did, but then Luke catches it. Well, it's Luke's Force Ghost, but we now know that, of course, Force Ghosts can interact with stuff, right? He actually says some line about, "You don't know, you just don't throw something away that's so important. It's kind of disrespectful," which is totally strange. It felt like a legit stab at Rian Johnson. You don't just throw your lightsaber away. That's super disrespectful. It was too meta for me, way too meta for me, and it felt super out of character. There's like those weird break moments where there's a character that talks about the Holdo maneuver in this movie too, and they're like, "Yeah, that doesn't work all the time." It really feels like these directors kind of struggling with each other. And I want that out of my film. Like, I want stuff like that out of my film because I'm looking at Luke Skywalker, but I'm thinking of people who write the dialogue for Luke Skywalker. And that should never happen. So, get that stuff out of my movie. Luke's dialogue wasn't too good, I feel. I think the acting was the best that Mark Hamill could do there, but he was written way better in The Last Jedi, I feel. For all the faults that movie had, I think the way that it wrote dialogue for Luke and the way that it made him quite bitter, of course he's more hopeful now that he's basically saved the galaxy. I get that, but I wish that he was more human, less of an Obi-Wan kind of master figure that needed to say expositional dialogue, and more of like a real human that understands Rey's struggle, because he does. So I wanted to see a little bit more of that, but I totally loved it. He hands Rey Leia's lightsaber. So Leia's lightsaber, right? Yes, it looked cool, by the way. We see a flashback, and it's actually pretty cool. The flashback of young Luke and young Leia training together after Return of the Jedi. So Luke training Leia to become a Jedi, which is great. They nailed young Luke in terms of CG. They didn't quite nail young Leia yet, which is crazy. They tried it in Rogue One, and now they're trying it again with a little bit later version of Leia, and they still didn't really quite get it. And I actually think in terms of CG, face tracking is the key. They really match those faces super well, which is crazy cool and, the easier part to do. But in terms of lip movement and eyes and stuff like that, I think you need to do a little bit more face tracking on that kind of stuff, because they can really get it right in video games these days. There's probably something that they're doing wrong there in terms of, recreating those faces. But I really think that they nailed young Luke. I would love to see a movie that explores him rebuilding the Jedi Order, right before Kylo breaks everything. So there's a weird moment where Luke tells Rey he and Leia actually knew that Rey was a Palpatine. I want to know how they knew it, but also why include this? Why would he say this? There was no, from a certain point of view, I did tell you the truth payoff. So it was kind of strange. JJ is too obsessed with giving answers in this film, some to questions that are already answered. So that was a little bit unneeded for me. Stuff like that, Don't give answers to everything. because some of the answers we already gotten. And if you didn't like the answer that another director had given it, that's just par for the course if you say, I'm not going to do the second film, right? That's just how these things play out. So Luke uses the Force to lift his old X-Wing out of the water there in Ireland Planet. The same theme as when Yoda plays, which is great, and I love that as a character arc for Luke, because he never got to do that, and he actually failed doing it, and now that is actually completed. I love that. So Rey leaves in that X-Wing. She actually puts on the helmet too, which is a great payoff for her wearing the helmet in The Force Awakens. Like that too. She leaves for Exegol to face the Emperor. And the other gang, the other main characters that are basically doing the space battle stuff, they want to go to Exegol too, thanks to a tracking that they find for Luke's old X-Wing. So they're going to do this big final stand thing with just a few ships, and they're going to fight like Palpatine's new fleet. They're completely overwhelmed, right? But it feels like they did pretty okay, which is strange. Not too many people die. There are people on top of the Star Destroyers that felt a little bit weird sometimes. I loved it in the trailer, but no one of note really dies. I think there's a moment where, rest in peace, Wex, or Snap Wexley, that character actually dies, which I think is very sad. But also, I really think that there needed to be a lot more casualties, this being the final film. They explained it by saying they can walk on these things or be near it because the other ships would never shoot at each other. What? That's a really weird thing. Rey enters Palpatine's lair. There was an arena with faceless hooded people, and they were said to be like other Sith, every Sith ever. But it was a missed opportunity for actual Sith cameos, right? There are so many in Legends. There are so many in actual canon. There are so many characters that they could have brought back as like ghosts or Sith ghosts or something like that. To me, it was really weird that there were like hooded people. I felt super disconnected from this all CG background. I really didn't feel like I was watching a real story. I was just watching CG computer scene. Palpatine's on a mechanical arm now. He has dialogue with Rey, talks about, her lineage and Empress Palpatine and stuff like that. But everything about it, the dialogue is great. The acting is pretty good, but everything feels, story terms, feels forced and a bit rushed. Like this wasn't the plan. We all had a different antagonist in mind. You can feel it in every moment. This is just put together at the last moment to, please fans in such a way, and it didn't really do that all that too well. So Kylo enters the lair without a lightsaber. He's thrown it away, and he had a big change of heart. Of course, this is the Rendemption, right? Or the Bendemption is what a lot of people call it. He uses a gun to actually take out some goons in that lair, and then he faces the Knights of Ren, which could have been a really cool fight. In some ways, it is cool. They do a lot of interesting things with Kylo there. But as for the Knights of Ren, they literally die as fast as the Praetorian Guards in The Last Jedi, or like the Jedi that Palpatine killed in his office when he was fighting Mace Windu in The Revenge of the Sith, which was a huge letdown. I mean, we built these guys up in our heads so much, these amazing like Knights of Ren with their unique powers and their unique weapons, and what would their characters be like, and how would they interact with each other, and what's their relationship to Kylo, and they just really quickly die like stormtroopers. But Adam Driver sells the fight very well. He has great body language, does a couple of really cool, fun, like gestures and things like that. I mean, Adam Driver just steals the movie from everyone. It's crazy. I just feel like that third act that we're talking about right now, the entire thing, the space battle and the stuff in Palpatine's lair, the entire final act is too dark to see anything. Everything is black or blue or dark blue or black, I really wish that, especially with lightning and stuff like that, things could be a little bit brighter, because I think that, from now, even in the DC movies, people have learned from that third act, everything being nighttime or dark, but Star Wars still hasn't learned that lesson. Palpatine shows the fleet, the ceiling opens up, the old, your friends are dying and you're here, it's played again. Not only have they already done that in Return of the Jedi, but they have done that in the last film before this too. They did that in The Last Jedi exactly. So it was really weird to see that. Rey was about to strike Palpatine down. That was great. She actually, gives in, and she's like, well, I guess I'll have to do this whole Sith thing now. But she feels that Kylo is there. And then she actually, does the pose to strike Palpatine down, but then her lightsaber disappears, which I think is one of the best moments. She connects with Kylo, about to be killed by the Knights of Ren, and the saber teleports in his hand, something that has happened over the entire course of the film with different objects and stuff. And yeah, Adam Driver with a blue lightsaber, a lot of improv during the fight from him, and just really great choreography as well. I think that fight was one of the most fun ones to watch in the film, but wish it was a little bit brighter and wish the choreography was a little bit tighter, right? But Kylo with a blue lightsaber, greatest thing. Meanwhile, the heroes in space, they get reinforcement. The best musical cue in the film happens here. So this is the big trailer moment, which completely spoiled this moment. There's nothing bigger than the big shot that we see. So that was a little bit sad. Sadly, no real great cameos aside from like older star pilots. We really thought this is the moment where we could see like a Rebels cockpit with some characters in live action or an Ahsoka or stuff like that. Nothing like that happens here. It's really tame, really simple. It could have been so much better, especially considering the, endgame stuff of it, where like Marvel truly goes all out with these moments. They do everything they can to be as crowd pleasing as possible while still sticking to a story. Star Wars, can do that and didn't in this moment, which is crazy. It's the last movie in 9 films. So Rey and Kylo versus Palpatine, right? The big battle, the big bad. They lose immediately. They get immediately caught in a force pull and get the life force sucked out of them. Kylo gets thrown into a dark abyss. There's literally no fight scene against the final boss of 9 films. I didn't per se need a lightsaber fight with him, but at least send some cool deceased Siths or Sith ghosts, guards, or anything to fight. Give us action. All that happened was Palpatine shooting force lightning in the sky. He didn't even really get younger from sucking the force out of them, which would have been great. A very young, Palpatine, a different actor. That would have been cool. Could have shown him off with a lightsaber and cool style there. That could have worked really well. They didn't do that. Then all the ships lose power. They fall out of the sky really slowly, but no one of note dies there, which is weird. I think that this is where Snap dies also. Rey channels through the force, she lays on the ground, looks at the stars, and then she basically centers herself. But only voices are here, which I couldn't decipher all immediately in the first watch, so I'll pay very close attention when I see it again in just a few hours. But I could definitely clearly hear Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, Yoda, so a lot of others are there. I actually saw the credits and a lot of names there, but I really want to focus to actually hear them. But yeah, right here, just voices. This could have been their Avengers Endgame moment, right? Force ghosts surrounding Rey. Get the actors in there. What are you doing, Disney? I mean, this is your big moment, the end of 9 Skywalker saga films. These guys are around. They've shown interest in interviews that they're up for the challenge. They really want to get back in there. They still look the part. They can really go into that same costume and makeup. And, even with a Force ghost aura around them, they could totally still sell it. And even that line, Palpatine says, "I am every Sith," and then Rey says, "I am every Jedi," which actually got a very bad sort of reaction out of people in the theater with me, even though there were all press members. They were groaning at that line, Rey saying, "I am every Jedi." So I don't know what that really means, but definitely the idea here that if you are every Jedi, show them that they are with you, that you are not literally that, but it means every Jedi is with you. That's what the line means. Show it. Just the voices is not enough. People will not decipher that. Only hardcore fans that see the movie for the second or third time will know every single character, but if you show them, we will know them. So the cross saber thing happened because now she has the 2 lightsabers and she does that cross formation thing, which felt weird and unlike Star Wars. When did that happen? Why is that a thing? Felt strange. Could have been a battle against lightning, her having a fight scene with different strokes of lightning getting shot at her and having some cool fight scene there. But instead, she just walked forward and killed Palpatine and crushed all the Sith guys in the stands with rocks. That's it just blew up. The heroes blow up the bad guys in space and they win the day. So Rey dies. You can see that very clearly. I actually thought it was a really great choice. I really hoped that the movie would have ended on Rey making a big sacrifice. That would have been great. Great end to her character and, her surfing her purpose, her being with her parents finally also. Could have been really awesome, but then Kylo climbs out of that big hole and he goes to Rey, Really great acting from Adam Driver, teary-eyed, really showing a lot of emotions in his face, and he actually heals Rey with his own life force, but he gives so much of it, of course, that's basically the last that he can give. Then Rey, yes, the Reylo moment happens. Rey kisses him, which is a great moment. I actually like that moment a lot. I think that there was so much chemistry between those actors that they earned that moment, and it felt genuine. It was a great moment, but he dies immediately after. Kylo is toast. And I thought that was a little bit sad because I could have really seen, Rey introducing Kylo to the rest of the Resistance, and that being a whole comedy on its own. That could probably never have worked. People would have gotten really mad, and Kylo would have killed everyone, or everyone would have killed Kylo. So Rey goes back to the heroes on the jungle planet. There's a big celebration, and I thought that this was the moment where we're going to see all different planets celebrating, and even though it would be pretty much the same as Return of the Jedi, I would have definitely been happy with that. But weirdly enough, there was only like Cloud City, like Jakku, and Endor with a Warwick Davis cameo as Wicket. But that was it. Like 3 weird out of context things. Like literally nothing else. Why those 3? Like I kind of get like Jakku, of course, yeah, that's the Rey thing, and then Endor because they were near Endor, I guess, and then the Cloud City thing because we did have Lando in the film, sort of. So that kind of makes sense, but there's so many planets in Star Wars. Why not Coruscant, Naboo, other places from the original trilogy? Why those 3? It was like, show a lot of planets, show big celebration, right? Felt, clearly rushed and really not given the proper love or care that it deserved. But there's a big hug between the main heroes, and it was super cute. Well shot. It really felt like the actors were saying goodbye to each other, and that was one of the moments that really gave me like this it's all ending, feeling, which is great. This trilogy, the 3 films, like working on its own, that was a really great moment to end it on. But yeah, you were looking for an Easter egg in the background of appearances, different, characters that were also in the battle, but there really were none. This was really about that main embrace. So for that, it really felt a little bit too long. But yeah, Chewie finally gets that medal that he didn't get at the end of A New Hope from Maz Kanata, but yeah, that doesn't really make all that much sense too. They could have probably introduced that a little bit better somewhere in the middle of the movie where it's like he's still angry that he didn't get it, or there was some mention of it, so now it really feels like this weird inside thing, right? So then Rey goes to Tatooine at the end of the film, right? I wish, because it looks great and it works out pretty good, but I wish this scene was tighter. I wish this scene was better. There's only a few changes that you should do to really make this scene a lot better. Finding the homestead was cool, burying the lightsabers, it all worked, but then the yellow lightsaber thing that Rey then shows and just turns on really felt like that whole Darth Maul thing in Solo. It just felt too showy to the audience, like, oh, wink, wink, she built this thing and now she turns it on. She had that with her the whole time. So it, to me, doesn't really matter. It felt too like, this is our final scene thing. This ties everything together. So a yellow saber, like she's not like a Jedi or a Sith or whatever. This is the thing. So I kind of get it, but at the same time, it didn't play out too well. The old woman then, like a random old woman with a camel, like shows up and she's like, who are you? There's not been anyone here for a very long time. That old woman should have been a cameo. And I would literally take any cameo. That could have been, Anakin. That could have been Shmi Skywalker. That actress could probably still pull that off. It felt kind of forced to have it a nobody. It felt, needed for the script to complete that little arc part. It could have maybe even been the woman that Rey looked at in the very first scenes of her in The Force Awakens, right? It should have been someone. Of course, I really wanted it to be Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen right there, and, not being antagonistic about it, so you look kind of familiar, what's your name? Something like that. So the shot of Luke and Leia as a Force ghost looking out over her, I think that was awesome. I think also CGIing different clothes on Leia, that's still okay, that's still good, and looking like her old self, that was awesome. So they pretty much give her like a little nod, so that means, yeah, you can go say it. So Rey who? Well, Rey Skywalker, of course. A lot of people in the theater were like, ugh. I could hear that, like, visibly. So, yeah, not too many people are going to be liking that. I actually don't mind it. I think that it worked towards that moment, so it earned it. to me, it just could have done it a little bit better, and not with a random nobody out there in the desert. It could have been someone that meant something, and maybe it would even be someone like she'll turn back and that person is now gone, right? So it was a vision, or it was a ghost, or it was a memory, or something like that. That would have been crazy. It could have even been her, like the ghost of her parents or something like that, or, something along the lines that would mean a little bit more than a totally nobody, right? So the last shot of the film, I totally loved. It was Rey and BB-8. So I think visually it looked stunning, really well shot. But the one problem that I have with it, that it was Rey and BB-8, two characters who really didn't do all that much together in this film. And it was those characters to round off 9 movies. That's the shot you choose to end on. I would have thought they'd put the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia looking out over her in there, to have them at least in the same shot, or some shot with all the main heroes, or cutting together. It's a good shot to end this trilogy on, but it's not a good shot to end 9 films on. So that were my basic thoughts. All in all, as you can probably hear, my main thought, and I'm still figuring this out, guys, because it's a huge thing. I loved so much about it, but my general thoughts when I walked away and when I really took it in, I was a little bit disappointed. There were a lot of things that I would have done differently, better. It's very easy to say that with all this resting on your shoulders. I think that this was a Herculean feat that JJ and Chris Terrio wrote. It was probably a very, very difficult thing to please the fans and to please newcomers and to please, of course, the idea that you have in your head yourself. So props. It was definitely a film that had some really great parts. It also had some parts that really needed tightening, and most of all, it needed some more general Star Wars love, right? Not only original trilogy, it just needed to encompass everything. So it didn't really do that, and I feel like that was the main fault of the film. It really felt like, oh, let's bring in the Emperor, and he's just bad now. He's just a bad guy, and we don't need to explain why he's here. We don't need to explain how he's here. He's just bad, and he wants to do bad things. And by the way, you're this person's brother, you're this person's sister, you're this person's grandparent. So it's pretty crazy. The story, it felt like the writer's heart wasn't in it or something. It was trying to please a type of fan that doesn't really exist, I feel. Like bringing Palpatine back, but only to have him die again by a new awesome girl protagonist. I mean, it's all cool, but it makes the fall of Anakin Skywalker and then the redemption of Darth Vader, which is Star Wars, worth almost nothing now, because prophecies should probably mean something, right? And an arc of a character should probably mean something, but now that has all led to a moment where a girl can do the exact same thing later. So again, the fall of Anakin Skywalker could have been tied into this a lot more, and this could have been a part of it and not, reboot something and give it new context, right? So it had cool, great set pieces, especially early on in the film, some really good jokes. The acting of Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley together, they were excellent. So there was a lot in here that I actually really loved. And again, talking to those fans at the start of this film, the guys that had these big hopes and dreams, I now know when seeing the film, they probably got nothing that they wanted. They were talking about all these crazy, prequel things that they wanted. They wanted, of course, it's about the Force, and it's about, ending the Skywalker saga. So definitely, Anakin will show up, and that will be the big ending, and they will team up with people, and there'll be a Force ghost battle, and there'll be stuff like this. And yeah, the Force definitely means this to them, and nothing of that ever happened. I got a great adventure, but a little bit of an empty and very entertaining, but rushed and slightly tone-deaf ending to 9 movies, but a great ending to this trilogy. So I think that if you're going to rewatch the entire saga now, it definitely is like the first trilogy, the original one, that has a perfect end. Return of the Jedi isn't one of my favorite films, but like those 3 films, they work together very well. The prequels are shaky, right? But Revenge of the Sith is not just a great ending, but it's a great tie-in to the original trilogy. That is what it does really well in thematics. I feel like the sequel trilogy, so this one, that doesn't do any of that particularly well. It's a pretty good sequel to the thematics and some of the characters of the original trilogy, but then it kills every single one of them and basically ends its own trilogy very well, but not 9 movies. So where does Star Wars go next? Far back or far into the future, I hope. I hope for big new themes. No super weapons, no light and dark maybe even, no X-Wings, no TIE fighters, no cantina scenes. I want people to think differently. I want people to maybe think, I want to say outside of the box, but maybe think inside the box a little bit. Maybe think about ideas that might still be there that have nothing to do with the imagery that we know and still inherently feel like Star Wars. Because we have The Mandalorian now, and a new episode is about to drop in a few minutes from now, and that actually does a whole lot of new things, a whole lot of new themes, and a whole lot of new imagery, and also brings back a lot of Easter eggs and stuff like that. I feel like the future of Star Wars should be something like that, and I hope in terms of feature films, they take it one film at a time and have a big plan laid out for if that film is successful and if there is a future there. But I definitely want either, if you go back in time, show me big battles with 10 million Siths, 10 million Jedi, or do something completely new. So either do a big fan fantasy or do the exact opposite of that and work towards the future with something new. Maybe it doesn't need a lightsaber. Maybe the evolution of that idea of a lightsaber. Maybe it doesn't need Jedi or Sith. Maybe the evolution of that kind of a, prospect. So if I had to rate it right now, I would give this film a 6.5 out of 10, which means it was serviceable. I liked it. I didn't love it. I really, really wish they'd go to higher heights for this film, like crazier. Take a little note from Marvel Studios in terms of fan-pleasing versus story-pleasing. And that pretty much does it for my review of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, the final movie in the Skywalker saga. I think all the performances were great, and I think that this will be something that we'll talk about for a lot of months to come. So thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you're not yet a member of the Blocked Content family yet, please hit the subscribe button right now. There's a lot of other hot takes that I want to do in the future, so ring the bell for notifications, so every time we make a new video, it will be right there on your screen. All the news and fun you care about will be delivered on the daily to you. Thank you guys so much for watching this big, huge video, and I'll see you guys around the corner where there's always more Blocked Content. See ya.